Hey guys, it's XBundok here. Today we are doing something a little bit different and we're putting together a Warhammer piece and doing some painting. Now this is not the first one out of this kit that I've put together. This is the Khorne Berzerker World Eater set. This is the fourth one and I decided to do it a little bit different. The first three I fully assembled before trying to paint. And there's just some nooks and crannies that are a bit hard to get. So what we're going to do for this guy, we're going to assemble each, portion. So his body and then his arms and the little jetpack, what do you do? And then we're going to prime and paint them separate just for the base coats. And then we'll assemble and then do the detail work. So all the detail work blends. This is my first time messing around with Warhammer. Assembly isn't too bad. I used to put together a lot of the Japanese model kits. I had some Zoids ones back in the day that I really liked putting together, and I mean these ones are at least in English, which help. But yeah, there's still some pieces with these that for folks with, giant bear paws, it makes it a little bit difficult. Of course, you can use assembly stand assists and things like that, but we're just going to go ahead, get this guy put together, and then get him primed up. So for a lot of the Warhammer models, they do have multiple options that you can do off of one. This guy could have either been dual wielding or using an axe. And of course we're going to go with the axe. I mean, why not? But you can see it ends up being crossbody on the figure. And that's kind of why I wanted to paint them separately, just because getting in behind that would probably just end up being a bit of a pain. Almost as much of a pain as actually putting these bits together. I will say the arm to hand attachment I didn't feel really confident with. They're not fragile, it's just I guess I just don't trust the glue, even though I'm using the glue that they make for these models. Maybe I'm just paranoid, maybe that's just me, I don't know. Yeah, they're just so small. So a lot of you are wondering why I'm even doing Warhammer, because I don't play Warhammer, and yeah, no, I don't play Warhammer. It's not really my thing. But I mentioned it on a live stream. My brother is actually getting into it pretty well, and he has his own little Tyranid army that he's building, and I know he's interested in the Necrons and things like that too. So I thought I'd get a couple just to play was it Kill Team? The one where you have the smaller, you don't need a full table. I think that's what it is. But just so he actually has someone to play with while he's learning, instead of, going somewhere to play and having someone just absolutely obliterate him and not care about it. I just, if a kid's learning how to play, just let the kid learn how to play. So I went out and got ones that I thought I would enjoy. These guys seemed Marine Corps / Mad Maxy, what have you. I like red and gold. That's just kind of the only things that I was using to decide on which ones I wanted. I know they had some that were like plague based, which I thought were kind of cool. But I didn't like how their foot soldier models looked as much. So I ended up going with these guys. Let me know down below if that was a good choice or not, because I'm sure hopefully we'll have some new traffic to this channel now that we've got a little bit of Warhammer content and you all can judge horribly what I do to this miniature. But yeah, so I picked solely based off of aesthetic, not points or lore or anything like that. So take that as you will. All right, so for the first mini that I painted out of this bunch, I did a white prime. With these, I went with the black prime. Because if I miss painting something, easy shadow, don't have to worry about getting it filled in. It's a good tactic, I think. You don't have to worry too much. B, I originally went with the white primer because I kind of wanted them to pop, but it felt too much, like it feels too bright. I'm only partway through this mini. I still need to, go over with a couple of washes and shading and things, but I'm still not necessarily happy with how he turned out. I'm not totally displeased, but it's not really what I had in mind. So instead of doing a white or a zenithal prime, I decided just to go with the flat black. And for the red on this guy, we're going to use the heraldic and the garnet red. Garnet as the base and then using the heraldic over top for a little bit of accent. So let's get some color on this guy. Now, for the gold accents on this, I'm not using straight gold. I'm actually going to mix some of the plate mail metal in with the gold. You don't have to use two metallics. You can use a gray. I just like it because it just adds to the shine. But for me, it gives kind of a tarnish feel to it. Like it feels used. It feels worn. It doesn't feel like straight gold. Which I think looks good. I know on some of the pictures I saw of folks painting, I mean, they just have that bright, brilliant gold with it. This gives it that kind of olive tone to it as well. So you'll see here my ratio. I just get like a flat, coating of the gold, and I use 2 to 3 drops of the plate mail, and I think it gives a really good tonality to it, and I think it looks nice. Just something to consider that if you're using metallics, you don't have to use the straight metallic color. I know that that's probably inherent, like you can always mix colors, right? But I feel like a lot of people don't think about that when it comes to what I would say as effects paint. So your metallics, folks are pretty good about mixing washes, things that would add a different gradient or sheen to it. Yeah, experiment with mixing those too. I mean, why not? It'll add depth, it'll add personality. It's a color that isn't out there. I mean, it could be, knowing Army Painter, they make so many in the triad. Maybe they have one that's close. But don't be afraid to kind of mess around a little bit. Now for the axe for this guy, I did a flat coat of that gold mix we used, but I don't want it all to be the same color. I do want a bit more grunginess to it, so I'm going to use that Monument Hobbies black wash, and we're just going to go into the recesses, not the entire thing, and then also on the chain as well. And then after that, we are going to go back over, and we'll do some highlight work on the raised pieces there that you see on the axe and the saw and things like that. But that wash just helps give it a little bit of depth. And then once we get that first coat on, what I did was I did turn the axe the way that it would be in the miniature and put just a little bit extra on and let it run down just a tad, so it almost felt a little bit more like weathering versus just a different color. All right, so here's our guy all put together. Why I didn't do any of the flesh tones before putting them together, I don't know, but I didn't. So we're going to use the Caucasian flesh tone on this guy for the base coats. And then we'll also use a little bit of the tans and reds in order to get highlights and shadows. And that'll be the next thing we do. And it's definitely a 2-coat process, for me anyway, using flesh tones of any kind on black primer. I just feel that it's much better just to do 2, 3 very thin coats versus trying to load it all up at one time and then end up having this chunky mess where you lose all your features. All right, so like I said, we're going to take just a little bit of red to mix in with that Caucasian flesh tone for our highlights. And so it's going to look pink, that's okay. And it's going to look like it stands out, and that's okay, because we're going to do more after it. So we're going to take this pinkish red and we're going to go over what the highlights are going to be. So his brow line, his nose, cheeks, lips, tops of his arms. In doing this voiceover, I'm now recognizing that when I did finish the mini, I never painted on eyebrows. So hopefully he looks okay without eyebrows. Maybe they got singed off or something. We just have to roll with it. But anyway, so we're going to do that highlight. And like I said, it looks a little bit sunburny, and that's fine because we are going to go over with a wash and it'll kind of pull everything together then. So now we're going to go in with that tanned darker tone that I was saying about, and we're going to put that in the eye sockets. And I found that just helps give depth and detail to the eyes without worrying about it too much. You know, it's one of the things that a lot of people don't like about painting minis is doing facial features, and I totally get that. So we're going to put that tan in there, and then we'll come back in with a bit of the flesh tone, just kind of feather it out a little bit so it looks a little bit more blended. And then we'll do the little details like the red inside his mouth, the white on his teeth. And I ended up going with green eyes for this guy. So we're going to run through all that, and then we'll come back to the wash stage. All right, so we're going to use our regular washes that we use on this guy. So soft tone for anything soft, like all the fleshy bits, and the strong tone for things like the armor. I'm not going to film that. You guys see me do washes a whole bunch of times. So we're going to follow on then with some dry brushing. I'm going to do a little bit of dry brush on the red for the armor. I'm going to go a little bit heavier on his pack on the back, just because I want that to be a bit brighter since it's higher up. And then after the dry brushing, we will move forward with a little bit more detail work. So we still have to get the skulls painted, the little spikes that the skulls are on, the base, things like that. You'll see for his skin, after I did the soft tone wash, I did go through and do like the gray, black cabling for their biomech type stuff. One thing I did that I know isn't canon, or maybe it is canon, I don't know, but it's not on a lot of the imagery, is I added the pinkish red around all of it, because like even if they've modified it, like you think there'd be some sort of skin irritation from always having all this stuff, you know, going into your system. So I added a little bit of that, just to, you know, add a little bit more, I guess, detail or charm to our wonderful little Berzerker here. And you can also see that with those washes that we did, it pulls together the different colors that we used on the face and the arms, even though we didn't do a whole lot of blending work on there. Now, here's what I love about changing the tones on your metallics, right? Is now, okay, we want to add some highlights. Literally all you have to use is the base gold color. You don't need to add, you don't need a tint. You can, if you want, you can add a yellow or a white to make it really feel like the light's hitting it. I don't necessarily want that for this guy. You know, if he's running around just slaughtering everything, I don't expect him to be very clean or bright. But now we can just take that base gold color and go through and do some top highlighting or some edge highlighting on anything we would want on this guy. And I think that just ups the convenience factor of darkening or changing the tone of your original metallic color that you're using. All right, so we've got our guy mostly painted. Maybe we'll go forward and do a little bit of detail work in the future, but I think he's looking pretty decent for now. So let's get some terrain on him. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I have some brownish green, you know, regular turf. I also have my black sand. I'm going to add a little bit of both on here. I was going to originally use this autumnal foliage, but I do end up going back with kind of an underbrush feel. And I just use clear tacky glue. I'm sure there's better things to use or things that are made for it, but I've never had any problem. I just put, you know, a dollop on there. I take a glue brush, which is just old paintbrush that I've battered and now he's doomed to be with glue for the rest of eternity. Use that to push it around on the model, get an even coating unless, you know, for some reason I want something to be built a little bit higher up. And then I'll just take my letter opener, actually, just because it's flat and it holds it well. I'll take that, I'll scoop up a bit of sand, I'll sprinkle that on there, but not totally cover the glue because obviously I want the turf to stick too. So then we'll go over, sprinkle the turf on, and you just wipe off the excess. It works for me. Granted, I'm not doing a whole lot of terrain pieces. I'm sure I would have something a bit more efficient or professional if I was, but I'm not necessarily worried about it. And yes, I did put the glue brush in the water. I'm not using it for paint anymore. It's okay. So let's go ahead and finish up the turf for this guy. Now, whenever I'm trying to add something like the underbrush shrubbery here, I'm a very symmetrical person, which isn't necessarily great for miniatures. But so I'll get my angled forceps here, and what I'll do is I'll just put a small dollop of glue down, pinch up a bit of the turf with those forceps, press it down, flatten it out, because I don't need this to be tall. It doesn't need to be like a large shrubbery. It just needs to be something that he's running through on the field, right? I don't need some crazy thing. Like if this was a larger miniature and I wanted to feel like he's like demolishing something and I wanted to put a small tree in, then I would. This guy's just, you know, running on the front line, just going ham. So I don't need anything too obscene. Just, you know, like I said, little underbrush, little shrubbery, no big deal. And here's our little Berzerker all finished up. Definitely think the black prime is the way to go versus white. There's a couple things I might do different, you know, try to get a couple things more done before doing the full assembly. But as for a first set, I don't think they're looking too bad. I'm sure a lot of people will be bothered that the entire set won't look the same, but that's fine because they're a learning set. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Comment if you have any suggestions or any ideas, or if you liked or disliked anything. And as always, take care.